Guys, this is Peter, the Mindful Astrologer, and it's been a while since I've put a video up, so I thought we would look into the case of Johnny Depp, as he is currently going through a lawsuit and trial with Amber Heard based on some allegations and what's been going on between them two. So I'll be looking at his relationships, why he's attracted a woman like Amber Heard, and what he needs to do so that he doesn't attract another woman like that, or person, or guy. I'll be also looking into perhaps his purpose as well, what he needs to do, and where he needs to go from this point on. And this will show his innocence and the accusations of him being violent as false, based on what we'll look into today. So let's look into it. So, to start with, we'll look into his ascendant, sun and moon. So, as you all know, the ascendant represents how you represent to your world, how you represent to the world. So in this case, it's in the sign of Leo. So that shows him as the showman, the entertainer. Because we've got the asteroid of Pallas here, Pallas represents a different way of thinking, uniqueness, intelligence. He brings that to the surface in his image, as you can see how he's dressed here. He's also got Uranus there and Mars, so he's got that quirky masculine persona that he brings and represents to the world. And you can see that as well in the midheaven up here, which shows his public image and movie career and all that kind of thing. So that's his ascendant. He's got his sun. We'll look into his sun now. So his sun is in the sign of Gemini in the 11th house. So Gemini is all about communication. 11th house represents community, represents a social cause or doing something for the greater good. So in this case, it's Hollywood. It's providing involvement with that arena of people, and that seems to work for him. He has his moon in Capricorn in the 6th house, so here emotions are a bit difficult for him to tune into, as the moon doesn't particularly like Capricorn. It's in its detriment. So Capricorn's very hard. Moon is very soft, so when you have hard and soft, it's not a very good combination. So that represents his inadequacy in understanding his emotions and what he wants and all that kind of thing, which we'll talk about in a second. So moving on, just clean this up. Let's look into his relationships. So relationships in astrology are represented by the 7th house. Okay. Now, he's got Aquarius on the 7th house, which means that ideally he'd want someone that's quirky, that's different, unique, someone that's like him, in some kind of way. Now, because we've got Saturn in the 7th house, there is some caveat or some condition around that. Saturn is all about your karma, what you need to do, where you need to do the hard work so that you're going to get some benefit or some payoff. All right, it's where we need to do the hard work, and it's everywhere in our charts. So for Johnny, in this case, he needs to do the hard work in his relationship. So what that would mean is, clean that again. What that would mean is he would really need to understand who he is and what he wants in a partner, and not just go for anyone. Okay, really get an understanding of the person he wants to get with, get a feel for how to connect with them, and build up the skills and resources to make the relationship work. And that's what Saturn's all about. It's about putting in the work to making it work. And normally when you don't do what Saturn asks you to do, you're going to have issues, or there's going to be some difficulty around that, which is karma. And as you all know, he was married before the age of 30. At around the age of 30, he divorced, I think it was. And the age of 30 is the Saturn return. So normally, up until the Saturn return, it's basically the results of what you reap. So I'm assuming based on that divorce, he hadn't really understood his idea of relationships and what he wants. And now that he's coming up to his second Saturn return, being almost 60 years old, he's again going through this karmic idea of relationships, of them failing. So he hasn't really followed what Saturn is saying. Saturn is saying to him, Johnny, you need to understand who you are, what you want, put in the hard work. And he hasn't done that from what we've observed. Also, the ruler of the 7th house, because we've got Aquarius on the cusp, the ruler of it is Uranus, just right there. So this would mean that his relationship life will influence his persona and how he interacts in the world and how people will see him. And this is a really difficult thing. This really shows that Saturn is really important for him to really work on. And because he hasn't done that, based on what's happened with what Amber Heard has said and done, it's really influenced his image. And as you all know, he's been rejected from multiple movie companies because he was accused by her as being violent. Okay, as shown by the Mars here, Mars represents also violence, sudden destruction. So that's Mars going in the negative way. By the way, in astrology, the outer planet always affects the inner planet. So when Uranus goes bad, or when it doesn't work for us, it's going to affect the planets that it touches. So in this case, it's giving him that reputation, which is obviously false with that conjunction there. It does not mean that he's a violent person. No, it just means that based on the failure of the relationship in this part of his life, it's made a bit of a mess in making him look bad. So it's that kind of thing. And on top of that, we'll also look into another part of the relationship, which is called intimacy. Okay, so intimacy, so basically in relationships, in astrology, you meet a person that you like here, you become friends, and you move on to the next part, which is the house of intimacy, which is the 8th house. Now, Johnny Depp has another issue here, and that is he's got the sign of Chiron in that house. Chiron is shown by this symbol here. And Chiron is a damaged part of ourselves that we need to do healing on. It's different to Saturn. Saturn is a part of ourself that works, but we need to just learn to make it work. Chiron is the damage that we need to fix, and we need to really make it work for us. So it's kind of like driving a car. If you were to compare it to driving a car. So Saturn is all about learning the car, putting in the work to drive it, to do all that kind of thing, and eventually you learn it and you're fine. Chiron is all about the car doesn't work and it needs to be fixed, and you can't fix it until you actually heal it and repair it. So for him, intimacy is a weak area that he hasn't really touched on. And in this case with Amber Heard, the intimacy hasn't been very strong. So in that situation, he fails to recognize really what he wants in a partner. Like, what is this person giving me? The 8th house is all to do with exchange. It's all to do with energy exchange. What I do for you, you do for me. And in this case, Johnny has failed to recognize what Amber Heard is really providing him for. In this case, it'd be growth, someone that really understands intimacy. They would understand, how this person makes them feel, how they help them grow, how they become better, how they form them. The 8th house represents the house of transformation. So this person, when you meet them, they're going to help you change your life. And with Johnny Depp, he's failed to recognize how to do that because of the Chiron there, which is just very difficult. And as a result of not understanding his relationships, shown by Saturn, by not doing the work, and not understanding the intimacy, shown by Chiron, he's really failed to really make anything work for him in the relationship department. And you probably find that the dealings with accountants, lawyers, has failed as well, because lawyers and accountants, especially accountants, they deal with other people's money, which is also this house as well. So along with intimacy, the area of managing money, especially his money, is very weak. And by not focusing on these areas, he's in a bad situation. And on top of that, this trickles down to him on a deep emotional level, because Chiron is in the sign of Pisces here, and Pisces is ruled by Neptune. And because Neptune is in the 4th house, that wound or energy is going to affect his stability. 4th house represents our footing, where we stand, our emotional stability. And for him, because he's failed in this area, his stability of who he is on a deep level, he's kind of questioning it and not really sure of, well, who am I on this deep level? He's had a difficult upbringing with his parents, so that's been put in a bad position. So all he's relying on is intimacy or relationships, which are not really working for him either. So it's a bit of a difficult situation. What Johnny Depp needs to do, what I would recommend him to do is, after this trial, he needs to step out of the limelight and really focus on his purpose and why he's here. I feel that the limelight has really given him the ability to make the most of this Leo and quirkiness, to make the most of this image of the Taurian, material image of the star. And he needs to move more towards finding meaning in his life, and that's shown by the North Node. North Node in the 12th house. The North Node in the 12th house represents finding meaning in spirituality, in something greater than ourselves. And because it's in the sign of Cancer, North Node Cancer, that's going to be in relation to who he is as a person on a soul level, on a deep level. And the journey that he has to do this would be somewhat similar to what Jim Carrey had done, where he stepped out of the limelight and he asked himself, who am I? In a greater question, in the greater scheme of things, why am I here? So he'd have to do something similar to that. It doesn't have to be just like that, but just a period of introspection and understanding the self. And by doing that, it will give him some clarity around his deeper self, shown by the 4th house here, the rulership, and that in turn will help him recognize the Chiron and that wound of not really connecting with that intimacy properly. So that would be something that he needs to do. And in this lifetime, this is part of his purpose. And also his mother has a lot to do with this, as shown by the moon. Moon rules the mother in astrology, and it's ruled by the house of Cancer. Got some good to me lines here. So that's the next step he needs to do. And if we look at the South Node, just rub this out. So the South Node is here. It's in the sign of Capricorn in the 6th house. So the South Node represents our past life, who we were, and what we already know, so to speak. And the abuse that he received from his mother has a lot to do with his relationship, as shown by that conjunction here. And because both the moon and the South Node are in Capricorn, and they rule, and they're connected to Saturn, that's going to come into his relationship. So he already was used to abuse within the relationship department, as his mother, as from what he was saying in the courtroom, that when he was younger, his mother abused him and his sibling, and that's really been a big impact on him. And he's recognised on an unconscious level that Amber heard, that abuse, and because he's been accustomed to it on an unconscious level. So what he needs to do now is to really let go of that and have some time out from Hollywood, from movies for a period of time, and really get to know himself so that he doesn't make these mistakes again. And there you have it. That's the astrology of Johnny Depp. And based on all this, in my view, I think that he is innocent because he's been brought up with abuse his whole life, and the astrology itself shows, as you can see, Saturn, Chiron, inadequacy in understanding how to make a relationship work from a perspective that's healthy for him, so to speak. So there we have it. Thank you for watching, and if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to comment them below. Thank you. Talk soon.